Thank you. All right, so we're not talking about clean coins. We're going to be talking about the moral case for Bitcoin. First, I mean, you probably know everybody on this stage, but just in case, give us a little bit of introduction of who you are for the audience here. Jimmy, start with you.
I'm Jimmy Song. I am a Bitcoin developer, educator, and entrepreneur. I've been in the Bitcoin space since 2011. I started contributing to open source projects related to Bitcoin in 2013 and have written 3 books, including one with Robert right here. So if you're curious, please go look them up.
Hey everybody, my name is Robert Breedlove. I'm the host of the What is Money show. Used to be hedge fund manager in the Bitcoin universe. Fallen down the rabbit hole deep enough to become full-time educator. Co-authored a book with Jimmy, working on a book myself, and just hoping to spread the good word about Bitcoin.
Hi everyone, my name is Guy Hirsch. I'm the US Managing Director for eToro. I've been in this space since 2013, and very passionate about this topic because this is what got me into the space.
Yes, nice, nice. So, you know, we've talked, I mean, there's so much about the investment case for Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin is scarce. Bitcoin is a better settlement rail because it's, you know, independent. I mean, there's so many different aspects in, like, the banking potential and so much about Bitcoin that we know and love and that we all talk about. But why the moral case? What is it, like, why is this an important thing to talk about and something that I know numerous of you specifically hit really hard? Jimmy.
Yeah, so not everyone is homo economicus, right? Like, you're not just hyper-rational beings that only care about profit and loss. That's how Keynesian economists kind of think of people, is just sort of people with specific incentives, and they only do you know, economically rational actions. But that's not how people actually are. People have values. People have desires to make the world better, right? Like, they think about legacies and about doing something that benefits the world instead of just them. So making a moral case is much more about showing the product of the possibilities of what Bitcoin is, instead of saying, well, it's good for you because number go up. Number go up is great. I love number go up. But that's not enough for everybody, right? I know many of you in here are here for number go up, and that's great. But you know, you take it to the next level and show how it is a moral imperative. That's a much stronger argument, and a lot of that has to do with the current system. The current system is highly immoral. It is a cesspool of theft, corruption, and cronyism. That's what it is. And sort of turning people on to that, the murky waters that we're continuing to swim in, I think is something that we need to do as Bitcoiners to make that case. That really, you know, this thing isn't neutral. It's something that we really need to think hard about and evaluate from a moral perspective.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand what morality is. It actually emerges in all animals. So if 2 wolves, Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot, if 2 wolves have a dominance dispute, they don't fight to the death. One of them gives up their neck to the winner so that they have the whole pack of wolves to take down the moose the next day. So morality actually emerges from play, and we as human beings play games with one another, and our moralities emerge from the rules of the systems we're playing within. And today, the most important game in the world, which is money, it's corrupt. The rules of that game are twisted to favor a few and disfavor billions. So that actually corrupts our morality. The Austrian economists would say that the monetary standard and the moral standard are inexorably linked. So the fact that we have corrupt money in the world today is, I believe, the cause of many of the results we're seeing, like all of this social unrest throughout the world, all of this these attacks on freedom of speech, this social divisiveness, I think it's all rooted in the corruption of the money, and I think it corrupts our characters and corrupts our morality. So Bitcoin as being the first man-made, incorruptible money and social institution we've ever had is potentially the most important invention in human history.
So to follow up on that, at the core, morality is about what is right and what is wrong, what is acceptable. And I think the creators of Bitcoin and the project that preceded that, like DigiCash and other projects, they were clearly, in my opinion, thinking that what is happening right now is wrong, that we shouldn't be surveilled. We should have the right, the fundamental right to transact with anyone, anywhere around the world, at any time that we would like to do it, without being suspects of nefarious activities, of just doing, of being bad actors. Just this presumption of guilt is, I think, at the heart of fiat and what the current system is. And so I think they had a lot of passion behind building a future that is right, that is just, a future where we all have access to our money whenever we want, that no one is in the way between us and our property. And they put their hearts and minds in creating something that is right. And I think money, at the end of the day, is our stories that we tell ourselves about the future. We take money because we believe we can pay with it, we can pay our rent, we can pay for mortgages, we can pay for the future of our children. And I think that the current system is not a good story. We want to tell ourselves a story about the future that is right. And so Bitcoin, and I think what it presents, is the story that at least I want to tell myself and my kids about the future. A story that is about the freedom to transact, the freedom to have access or to build my wealth the way that I see it, without censorship, without interference, just a future that is right.
So you bring up in that we want to own our money. And like there's something about the nature, like that's kind of the fascinating thing about Bitcoin, is that it's an independent system of ownership. Like there's no authority telling you that you own this thing. Bitcoin is the authority. And essentially everywhere else in the world, we don't have that. Like that's completely, everything that we own because some authority higher up the ladder says that this is ours. And if they stop saying this is ours, it's basically not anymore. That independence is completely missing until Bitcoin. What is it about ownership that is connected to morality, about property rights? Why is that so integral?
Well, property rights are essentially like the most basic human right, if you think about it. There is no other right without property rights. You think about something like freedom of speech. It doesn't make sense unless there's property that you're talking about. It's because we have public land that we have to even discuss things like freedom of speech. You do not have the right to come into my home and yell at me, right? Because it's my home. It's my property. The thing about property rights is that there are two sort of like legal ways in which you recognize property rights. There's positivism, which says that the government gives you the right to do X, Y, or Z, or have X, Y, or Z, or whatever. And there's the natural law philosophy, which says that we have these rights already, and that the government can't take them away. That is indeed what this country was founded on, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and we are endowed with the right to liberty, property, and all these other rights. But property rights are at the core of what it means to own something. And if you don't own something, then you get into positivism, and every evil authoritarian regime has that we think of as evil has been positivist. You think about Nazi Germany or Soviet Union or any of these places where they commit these atrocities. The moral sort of case for positivism comes from the government decides what is moral. It is a might makes right philosophy. A natural law philosophy means that you actually have rights already, and that the government is there to protect them and not take them away or give them or do whatever. Bitcoin is a natural law money. The dollar is a positivist money, and that's the big difference. One is used to control, one is there to give you freedom. That's it.
I think it's really important to clear up this common misconception of what property is. Like, we always think it's the car or the stock certificate or whatever the item, but it's actually the relationship between the owner and that item. It's the exclusively acknowledged relationship that you have rights and responsibilities to that piece of property. Now, traditionally, we had to preserve this property with a monopoly on violence. We had to have guys with guns saying, hey, don't take his car, it belongs to him. But Bitcoin's the first property right that exists metaphysically, as Jimmy said, and it exists independently of this monopoly on violence. This is so important for civilization because if you can't invest your time and energy creating something, knowing that you can own it, that you have the rights and responsibilities to that asset, then we cannot trade favors with one another, and we cannot create the wealth we see in the world. Everything you see around you is created through trade. Like, we create wealth by specializing in trading with one another. If that trust arrangement with property breaks down, civilization breaks down. And every time a dollar is printed, that is a violation of private property rights. Dollars are just a claim on all the stuff. So you print a dollar, you're taking stuff from the hands of one group and giving it to another. You're not creating any new wealth in the world whatsoever. So at the end of the day, property is about a relationship between yourself and your time, right? How can I invest my time knowing that I can own that? So the fact that there's a central bank, a centralized institution that can print money while the rest of us are forced to use, it means they're stealing our property and stealing our time. This is the problem in the world. This is the core that Bitcoin fixes. It can't be inflated, can't be confiscated, perfectly preserves property rights.
Property rights are natural rights, as Jimmy said. It predates governments. When men were around without any government, they started creating stuff. They started building shelters. They started building ways to hunt. These were, it was clear to them that what they created was their property, and no one else had any claim to that. It was very clear that when you create something, it's yours. And they fought against enemies that tried to take it from them. It was very, very clear and natural to them. And today, we somehow, throughout history, somehow lost that connection. Sometimes we assume that what we create first belongs to someone else. When we earn a wage, first something is being taken to someone else. We take it now for granted, but it is wrong. What we work for, what we create, is first and foremost is ours. And only then it should be us to decide if we give it to someone else and on what terms. It's a fundamental truth, and it's being distorted right now. So I think what Bitcoin creates, especially in much more corrupt environments around the world, is a way for people to live up to that natural, fundamental right of owning their property, of defending their wealth against corrupt governments. And we were talking in the past about the notion of if today you had to physically move between a corrupt environment into maybe less corrupt environment in order to protect your family, to protect your wealth, today with Bitcoin, you can do digital migration. You can migrate to this new thing, this new phenomena, this new environment, and protect your wealth and build the future that you want for your family without risking your lives by going on a boat somewhere or crossing the desert or doing other extremely dangerous things. You can actually do this digital migration, move into this new paradigm, and then live the way that we all should live by having our property, first and foremost, belong to us. And I think that is just a beautiful thing that's happening around the world, and people get it. And I think this is why we see Bitcoin being adopted in so many places, because people at the end of the day have a natural inclination to own their property. And they would flock into Bitcoin the more they understand it. And it will be key, I think, to fight censorship, to fight corruption around the world. And it will literally save lives at the end of the day. And that's why it's so important to tell that story of the moral case for Bitcoin, to get that adoption and to get more people to use it.
Yeah.
Can I add something here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it really is about property rights. And the thing that violates property rights is theft. And the thing about the current system is that it is, as I said before, a cesspool of theft. But not a lot of people understand how deep that theft goes. The US dollar is the reserve currency for the world. So every time the US dollar expands, everybody that has the dollar is being stolen from, okay? Everybody that owns it. Now, that's not just other central governments. It's not just banks or whatever. It's people in other countries. In fact, some of the most vulnerable people in the world. These are people in Venezuela, North Korea, Zimbabwe, Nigeria, Turkey, wherever. These are the people that are being stolen from. And that is the moral case against the fiat money. Because every time the dollar expands, those are people that are being stolen from. And it's not just the Fed. It's the Fed, of course, whenever they issue new treasuries or they buy new treasuries, they're expanding the money supply. It's also corporate bonds. It's also mortgages. It's also your credit card. We are culpable. We are morally in a position of stealing from others when we expand the money supply ourselves. And we're not just stealing from other dollar holders. We're stealing from some of the most vulnerable people in the world.
You know, in the context of like property rights, like the reason the economy works is because we're able to, it's the specialization of labor, right? It's that I can trade something that I do today with something that you specialize in, and we can all actually collectively work towards common goals. Like we can each build one piece of this psychotic room with all the lights and the air conditioning and the projectors and everything, and then together, like we've built something astronomical that nobody individually could ever accomplish. But it's specifically because we have that promise. Like you talk about this all the time in your pieces, that Bitcoin is time. It's cementing things that we have already done. It is proof of work. It's proof of work of our past. So like when you consider like somebody who's made like makes $1 off, or let's say 1,000 sats off of making a sandwich, and they save $1 million for making 1 million sandwiches. What they've actually done is they've fed 1 million people, and they've asked for nothing in return. That money is society's promise to pay them back. That you did this for us. This is your time. This is your proof that you worked for us, and we are going to give it back. To print that, to counterfeit that, is to steal your history, is to renege on that promise, is to lie that says, oh, well, now that I just wrote this on this piece of paper, I'm the one who produced that for society. I'm the one who made those sandwiches. No, you aren't. No, you aren't. And you have to have a sound monetary system to keep that promise alive. And that promise is the heart of what makes an economy work. That's why the people in those vulnerable areas can't build an economy. they don't have the structure to work together and actually put something that 1,000 people can do, and have that capital actually build up for a prosperous society. But money touches everything that we do. Like everything, every transaction, we do it hundreds of times a day sometimes. When you actually have a perfectly neutral and moral money, what are the second and third order consequences of that? Because nothing goes untouched. It touches everything. What do you think are the main things?
I think Safety's coming out with a new book called The Fiat Standard. That's probably all of the second and third order consequences. So go contribute to his Kickstarter if you're curious. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of them, and a lot of it has to do with how we perceive the world. And we become a lot more high time preference. Words like YOLO and FOMO are very much in that realm. We become a lot more shallow or materialistic instead of civilization building and low time preference and trying to create something that lasts instead just however we can scam other people. Scamming is really stealing, right? It's about property. Instead, what Bitcoin does is it lets you sort of get into this mode of providing value for others. And that's ultimately how civilization is built up. So, yeah, there's a ton of consequences, and we don't have time to get into all of them. But Fiat Standard, we also put it into our book, Thank God for Bitcoin, like chapters 5, 6, and 7. So
I've got my copy of that now. I haven't read it yet.
I think the way you described that, guy, is really good, that money is a social contract with the future, right? So we're trading with everyone across time. So I've rendered a lot of services to the market. I need to claim something that I know I can go and get similar services back.
Yeah.
So you're trading with the future. And if that trust relationship breaks down, your relationship with the future contracts as well. So if money is this intertemporal agreement that we're making with ourselves and others across time, if money can be violated, all of a sudden our scope of concern shrinks. We become much more focused on just ourselves and our immediate circumstances. But when money holds value and can be relied upon for its supply to maintain its integrity across time, we expand that sphere of concern to encompass more and more of ourselves across time and others. So this is what Austrians say about lowering your time preference. And this is the basis of civilization. The lower we can make our time preference, the more civilized we become by definition. And inflation is antithetical to this whole thing. Inflation is legalized counterfeiting. And counterfeiting is criminalized inflation. They are the same thing. Yet we tolerate it in the US dollar as if it's the norm. It's the largest criminal enterprise in human history. That's why we're so passionate, I think, as Bitcoiners against central banking.
Yeah.
So I want to say that, as I said, like money is basically is stories that we tell ourselves about the future. And it's at the heart, as everyone said here, of everything that we do. It's at the heart of the relationship we have with our family, with our friends, with institutions, and with ourselves. And I think that, when I first kind of started to get into Bitcoin, I immediately thought that this is money, but it's an ideological movement. It's an ideological movement that has a lot of resemblance to in some aspects, to religion, and to other kind of concepts that are bigger than ourselves. And I think we all here in the room, we want to see Bitcoin get into $500,000 or $1 million, doesn't matter. And we tell all our friends and family that, hey, you should invest in that because this is the future and so on and so forth. But it won't happen. It just won't happen unless people will change their belief about the world. It just won't happen. People need to really depart from how they think about society and how they think it should be organized in order to see the future that we want to see, which is essentially the separation of state and money. And I think that is something we just ought to understand and ought to do if we want to see the world move into this new paradigm, which will have substantial consequences on everything, on politics, on the economies around the world, but also with your own kind of small nest of your family. It's just a fundamental departure from one concept to a new concept. And unless we're going to be able to come and convey people that this is okay, this is safe, the world's not going to burn, and the world's not going to, we're not going to devolve into kind of wars and whatnot, this is actually better, there won't be that swell of this dramatic change around the world. So I think this is vital to convince people
Well, actually, I think
about the moral case of Bitcoin. This is just better than the current system, and only then I believe that we would see the true transformation happening around the world.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I'm sure we could probably go on for another hour. So, we guys good? We're good for an hour? No. We got to wrap this up. Thank you guys so much. Jimmy Song, Robert Breedlove, Guy Hirsch. I really do think, this is a moral, like you said, it's an ideological movement. This is a moral reason that we are here. We're trying to fundamentally change something at the base of everything that we do and get some sense of neutrality in how we interact with each other. And I think the moral case for Bitcoin, and you guys are unbelievable at laying that stuff out. You've got to be checking out all of their other work. It's amazing. There's so many. He wrote the moral case for Bitcoin, Masters and Slaves of Money. I mean, there's just so much to dig into. So check these guys out, and thank you guys.
Can I say one more thing?
Go to town.
All right. I'd like to just say one more thing. The reason I'm here is because I want to bring sound money to the world, and the way you bring sound money to the world is with holders. So I want to tell all of you that you're all the heroes.